Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take the sources you send us and, well, really get into the crucial insights.
That's the plan.
And today, we're diving headfirst into Stephen Bartlett's book, The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life. This is kind of our shortcut to understanding the big lessons from his journey, founder of Social Chain, Flight Story, Third Web.
Right, and all those conversations from his podcast, Diary of the CEO. Huge range of people he's talked to.
Exactly. So the book isn't just stories, right? It's got a structure.
Yeah, it does. He lays out 33 principles, these laws, grouped into four pillars.
Yeah.
The self, the story, the philosophy, and the team.
Okay.
And what's interesting from the get-go is his belief that, well, principles last longer than tactics. And maybe importantly for our listeners, he thinks most books are just too long.
Huh. Definitely aiming for efficiency here, then.
That's the idea.
So our mission today is to basically cut through all the theory, pull out the stuff you can actually use, those nuggets, those surprising bits from the 33 laws.
That you can apply, whether it's in business, leading a team, or just, everyday life.
Right. Let's get started. Pillar 1, the self. Bartlett says this is the foundation, personal growth. And law number 1 is know yourself to lead yourself. Seems straightforward, almost obvious, but what's the deeper layer there?
Well, what's really insightful isn't just knowing strengths and weaknesses. It's digging into your cognitive biases, the ways our thinking trips us up.
Ah, right, those mental shortcuts that aren't always helpful.
Exactly. Understanding those helps you anticipate your own mistakes, almost.
Yeah.
So self-awareness becomes this, proactive risk management tool.
Okay, I see. Especially if you're leading others.
For sure. He talks about using self-reflection seriously at Social Chain. Not just thinking about it, but journaling, getting honest feedback, even the uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. And apparently that process helped him realize storytelling was one of his core strengths.
It did. And knowing that wasn't just a label, it actually shaped how he led, what kind of companies he built. It guided his strategy.
Makes sense.
Which leads neatly into law 2, discipline over motivation. We've all felt motivation just disappear, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. One day you're fired up, the next, nothing. But isn't there a risk of just grinding away with only discipline? What about passion?
He doesn't say motivation is useless, just unreliable. Discipline is the structure, the system you build so you keep going even when you don't feel like it. Think about his podcast. He was consistent, recording regularly whether he felt super motivated that day or not. That consistency is what got it to number 1.
Okay, so discipline is the engine. Motivation is maybe the occasional turbo boost.
Something like that, yeah. It's about having those systems. Which brings us to law 3, confront reality.
The ostrich effect, he calls it, sticking your head in the sand. We all do it sometimes, right? Avoid the hard conversations, the difficult data.
We do. But the key insight here isn't just face facts. It's developing the emotional resilience to do it without freezing up or denying it.
How does he suggest doing that?
He has this 4-step process. Pause, acknowledge the reality, review your emotions about it, and then act. It's a way to manage that initial fear or anxiety.
Pause, acknowledge, review, act.
Okay.
For anyone listening, think about that difficult conversation you've been putting off. This framework could help actually tackle it.
He used an example from Social Chain, right?
Yeah.
About a toxic employee.
Yeah, apparently there was some hesitation, maybe because they were good at their job, but dealing with it directly actually boosted the whole team's morale in the end.
It shows how avoiding the tough stuff can actually make things much worse later on.
Exactly. It rarely just goes away on its own. Which connects to law 4, health is wealth.
Not exactly a revolutionary idea, but he seems to really emphasize it, including mental health.
Absolutely. He's open about burnout, talks about mental health in the workplace. It's not just a nice to have for him, it's essential for performance.
He mentioned his morning routine, didn't he? Meditation, running, credited it with improving his focus. Yes. And the core message there, especially for people with demanding jobs, is that health isn't separate from your work strategy. It is part of the strategy.
You can't perform long-term if you're running on empty.
Precisely. You need to recharge. And the last one in this first pillar, Law 5, embrace failure.
We hear that a lot. Fail fast, learn quick.
Right, but Bartlett adds a twist about Plan Bs. He suggests that having a safety net can sometimes dilute your focus on Plan A.
Oh, interesting. If you know you have an easy out, you might not try as hard.
Potentially.
Yeah.
He reframes failure not as the end, but as data, critical information.
Like the failed product launch at Social Chain.
Exactly. That failure directly led them to pivot into influencer marketing, which became huge for them. It's about learning and adapting, not beating yourself up,
So for listeners, it's about asking, what did I learn? Not whose fault was it?
and maybe committing fully without immediately looking for the escape hatch. Okay, pillar 2, the story. This is all about communication connection.
Starts with Law 6. Avoid wallpaper. I like that image.
Me too. It's about not being generic. Your message just blends in if it's like everything else. He talks about habituation, how our brains tune out the familiar.
So the question for us is, are we just repeating the same old stuff? How do we stand out?
Well, his example was Social Chain, using really absurd, funny ads for a pretty boring product. Engagement apparently doubled. Unexpectedness grabs attention.
Which leads right into Law 7. Earn attention in 5 seconds. Wow, 5 seconds. That's brutal.
It is, but think about scrolling online.
Mm-hmm.
Attention spans are incredibly short. You need a hook immediately.
What kind of hook works?
Something provocative, intriguing, maybe something that speaks directly to a pain point. Look at his podcast intros. He often uses a really striking quote from the guest right at the start.
Grabs you instantly. Okay. Law 8. Psychological moonshots. What's that about?
It's about small changes that have a big perceived impact, often by increasing transparency or reducing uncertainty for people.
Can you give an example someone could use?
Sure. His example was Social Chain showing a client their creative process live. Didn't fundamentally change the work, but hugely boosted the client's trust.
Ah, okay. So maybe for our listeners, it's like giving more regular brief updates on a project makes people feel in the loop.
Exactly. Small effort, big impact on perception. Then Law 9, absurdity sells, taking the unexpectedness idea further.
Right. But how do you do that without just looking silly or unprofessional?
He stresses the balance between absurdity and authenticity. It still needs to fit your brand or message somehow.
Like that beverage brand stunt with influencers bathing in the drink. Absurd, but maybe it clicked with their audience.
Probably. It has to feel genuine, even if it's weird. It's about finding your kind of standout moment.
And the last one here, Law 10. Build a personal brand. This feels really relevant now, even if you're not like an influencer.
Definitely. Bartlett argues it just amplifies your influence, whatever your field.
So how do you build one that's authentic, not just a performance, especially for professional growth?
It comes back to authenticity. Sharing your actual values, your knowledge, your journey, like Bartlett's own candid posts.
Okay.
For listeners, it's thinking, what do I genuinely stand for? And how can I communicate that consistently in my interactions, online and off? Showing up as you are.
Okay, good advice. Let's move to pillar 3, the philosophy, guiding principles for decisions. Law 11 is Kaizen, sweat the small stuff.
Ah, yes, continuous improvement. The small tweaks that add up.
Like Toyota's philosophy. But how do you actually fit that in when everything feels so fast-paced?
The key is making it routine. Maybe dedicating just a little time each week to spot and fix small problems or inefficiencies.
Like Bartlett fixing tiny bugs in the Social Chain app, prevented users from leaving.
Exactly. It's the cumulative effect. Don't wait for the big crisis, fix the small leaks.
Then Law 12, pressure is a privilege. That's a reframe. Seeing stress not just as bad, but as a sign you're doing something meaningful.
Right. The idea is, if you feel pressure, it's probably because the stakes are high, because it matters to you.
How do you actually make that mental shift when you're feeling overwhelmed?
He mentions visualization. Also, consciously connecting the feeling of pressure to the importance of the goal, like channeling nervous energy before a big pitch, which he apparently did for Flight Story.
So acknowledge the pressure, but frame it as fuel because the task is important.
Yeah, something like that. Then, Law 13, never stop learning. Crucial today.
Absolutely essential. And he emphasizes learning from diverse sources, right? Not just staying in your lane.
Definitely. His podcast is proof, talking to scientists, artists, entrepreneurs. He mentioned interviews with scientists actually informed his health ventures.
So for us, it's about staying curious, actively looking for new ideas, new perspectives, even outside our immediate field.
Precisely. Keep feeding your brain. Law 14. Take calculated risks. Not just any risks, calculated ones.
Meaning assess the potential upside versus the downside.
Exactly. Understand the potential rewards, understand the potential losses, and make an informed bet. Often looking for that asymmetric upside where the potential gain far outweighs the possible loss.
Like his investment in Third Web. He saw huge potential despite some doubts.
Right. It wasn't a blind gamble. It involved due diligence, market understanding. For listeners, it's about doing the homework before taking a leap.
Makes sense. And Law 15. To master, teach. Explaining something helps you understand it better.
It really does. It forces you to structure your thoughts, identify weak spots in your own knowledge.
So, how can people apply this day to day? Look for chances to mentor or just explain things clearly?
Yeah, explaining concepts to colleagues, presenting ideas, even writing things down clearly. Bartlett uses his podcast partly for this, sharing insights, which reinforces his own understanding.
Okay, final pillar. The team. Building and leading groups. Law 16. Hire for culture.
This one's big. Going beyond just skills on a CV. Do they fit the team's values and way of working?
So, culture fit can sometimes be more important than specific skills.
Bartlett argues yes. He even talks about firing a top performer at Social Chain because they were toxic to the culture.
Wow, that's a tough call.
But it sends a strong message about what's truly valued. For leaders, it means first defining your culture, then assessing candidates against it.
Right. Then, Law 17, lead inconsistently. Sounds counterintuitive. Doesn't that mean being erratic?
No. It means adapting your style to the individual, not treating everyone exactly the same.
Okay. So maybe being more hands-on with one person, giving more freedom to another.
Exactly. It requires really knowing your team members, what motivates them, how they communicate best, and tailoring your approach.
Got it. Law 18. Skills are contextual. The value of a skill depends on the situation.
Yeah, a skill that's vital in one context might be less so in another. What's key is transferability.
Meaning skills you can apply in different roles or industries.
Right. Like Bartlett applying his social media skills to PR for Flight Story. It's about understanding the underlying principles, not just the specific software or technique.
Good point in a fast-changing world. Law 19. Psychological safety. Creating that environment where people feel safe to speak up, take risks, even fail.
Hugely important for innovation. If people are scared of blame, they won't suggest new ideas or point out problems.
How do leaders build that?
Fostering trust, encouraging different viewpoints, framing mistakes as learning opportunities. Bartlett's failure forums at Social Chain are a concrete example.
A dedicated space to talk about what went wrong constructively. I like that.
Yeah. And the last named law, 20, the pre-mortem. Thinking about failure before you start.
Instead of a post-mortem analyzing what went wrong after, you imagine failure beforehand and try to prevent it.
Exactly. Get the team together, assume the project has failed, and brainstorm why, what could have caused it.
Then focus on the biggest risks.
Right. He suggests focusing on the top 3 or 4 most likely pitfalls. Third Web apparently used this to tackle scalability issues early on. It's proactive risk management.
Smart. Okay, so those are the 20 named laws, but the sources mentioned 13 more inferred ones.
Yeah, laws 21 to 33, we don't have the specific chapter details for those, but based on his work in podcast, we can make some educated guesses about the themes.
Like authenticity wins. Seems core to his whole brand.
Absolutely. And given the markets he operates in, adapt or die feels almost certain. Maybe linked to Social Chain, getting into TikTok early.
Possibly. What else? Maybe something about provocation or pissing people off strategically. Sometimes controversial campaigns work.
Could be. He's definitely not afraid to be bold. And given his output, effective time management seems highly likely. You don't achieve that much without discipline there.
True. And financial acumen or literacy essential for any sustainable business.
Definitely. Building intense loyalty, like a cult-like following, might be another theme. Thinking about early Flight Story.
And dealing with self-doubt, overcome imposter syndrome feels like a topic he revisits often.
It does. Also, the fundamental skill of effective communication, his TEDx talk, his podcasting, it's clearly vital.
Leveraging social media strategically has to be in there, surely.
You'd think so. And bouncing back from setbacks, resilience under fire, essential for entrepreneurs.
What about looking ahead?
Maybe the future is now, focusing on innovation, like Flight Story, using AI tools, and giving back with initiatives like his Flight Fund.
And finally, maybe something tying it all together, like reflect and grow, that continuous cycle of learning and adjustment.
Seems logical, mirroring the Kaizen idea. Of course, these are inferences based on the available material.
Good point. And we should also mention some critiques, right? It's not all praise.
No, it's important. Some find an overemphasis on maybe marketing and that hustle culture vibe.
Right. And there's been talk about maybe limited female perspectives featured in his work historically.
That's been raised. Also, the nature of distilling complex ideas into laws can sometimes feel like oversimplification. And our sources themselves have limits. We don't have every detail on all 33.
Crucial context for listeners. Okay, so
Okay.
let's try and wrap this up. What's the big picture from this deep dive into Bartlett's 33 laws?
Well, it paints a pretty comprehensive picture, doesn't it? A framework for success, really, covering personal growth, communication, guiding principles, and teamwork.
It really connects the dots between those different
And
areas.
for our listeners focused on efficiency and actionable stuff, I think two things really stand out. First, his focus on principles over tactics, the foundations. The foundations matter more than the latest trend.
And second,
That idea of Kaizen, small, consistent improvements adding up over time. It feels very achievable, but powerful.
it does. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Mhm.
As you heard about these laws, self-awareness, discipline, storytelling, calculated risks, team culture, which one or two really jumped out at you?
Yeah, which one feels most relevant to your current challenges or maybe your goals right now?
Perhaps focusing on that one principle is your next step, a starting point for your own reflection and, well, action.
Absolutely. Keep exploring these ideas, see how they fit or don't fit your own path, continue your own deep dive.